Are you ready to unlock the power of questions and transform your leadership? Join Kyle Gillette as he reveals game changing strategies that will empower your employees, foster independent thinking, and drive collaboration. But what happens when one question takes a shocking turn, leaving a leader in a state of uncertainty? Find out in this riveting exploration of leadership and the unexpected twists it can bring.
Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining me today. If you missed my last episode and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on my social media pages as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if you'd like to receive notifications on when my podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Kyle Gillette is a 4-time business owner and current owner of Blue Shirt Coaching, which helps chiropractors and other business owners build better systems, empower their team, grow their leadership, and increase revenue and profits through next-level accountability. Kyle has multiple coaching and behavioral assessment certifications, is a podcast host, author, and creator of the Blue Shirt Leadership Framework. Kyle helps his clients be self-aware, lead with accountability, use a growth mindset, and empower others. Blue. Ultimately, his goal is to help them be more, do more, have more, and give more. He is always looking to share practical insights from his experiences wrapped in engaging stories. Always an open book, Kyle provides an honest look at business, leadership, and being a dad. So Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Candy.
I'm going to have a great time, I know, today talking about this, and I know our listeners are going to learn a lot from the discussion. But before I ask you questions on the topic, I'd love for you to share just a little bit more about how you began working with business owners.
Sure. I just want to point out one thing that I find interesting is how our spaces just seem to be flowing together with your plants and then the separated picture and then my separated picture and plant. It's wonderful. And usually the backgrounds are very different. So anyway, I appreciate that. My history is an interesting one in terms of how I got into what I got into. So I'll keep it brief, but I grew up on an orange farm in the Central Valley of California. And when I was in my later teens working for my dad, I recognized that this isn't what I wanted to do. It had nothing to do with him. It just was, I didn't want to do it. And so I picked a very different major than farming in college, which was kinesiology. And then as I wrapped up my kinesiology degree, I realized I don't want to be a physical therapist. And then I went and was terrified about being an adult. And so I ended up getting this opportunity, really fortunate, really, I don't want to say lucky. I think it was God's providence, but I got the opportunity to work in this men's mentoring program and did that for 9.5 years and worked in 3 different positions, ultimately got to run the program, ran a pet resort while I was in it, helped double the revenue in that, got mentored the whole time while I mentored other people. So that was really the beginning of my coaching career. Because I got to live in this facility with the guys. And then once I moved out of the facility, I still ended up mentoring and coaching them for the next 8-ish years. And so I really got to cut my teeth on coaching people during that time frame. And these were guys that are 18 and 25 and kind of struggling with life. Moved up to the Pacific Northwest after getting married and having some kids. And then I just struggled again. It was a mess. I didn't know what I wanted to do again. And ended up applying for 50 jobs in a 4-month period, got 2 interviews, and then landed an HR job eventually in that time frame. And that's when I got exposed to personality assessments and discovered that the gift that I had, that I'm really good at understanding those and interpreting the results and helping people with them. So started doing workshops, was successful with those workshops, and went, wow, I'm not getting paid very well for this HR job. And I can make that much money in like a short amount of time doing these workshops and doing some coaching. So I gave notice and started my business, and that was just about 5.5 years ago. So that's the very brief shotgun version of the story, but it was a really neat journey, and it all very nicely ties together with coaching as the central component without me even knowing that's what it was going to be.
Mhm. Well, and I love when we hear kind of the stories of how people got to where they are, because it's not always just a direct shot, right? I call myself an accidental entrepreneur too. I didn't intend to be a business owner, but someone asked for help and knew what I did in corporate, and now here we are. It's, many, many years later, over 20 years later. But I think that also helps sometimes when people are thinking, of becoming an entrepreneur, or maybe they're struggling too, and they're thinking, well, it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. So hearing the struggles, and you are now where you are, it took a while, but you found that right place, I think can be encouraging. So thanks for sharing that. But I do know in your intro, I did read, that you have these terms that make up the word blue, and you have this blue shirt framework. So I would love for you to say, what really is a blue shirt framework, and how did you come up with that?
Yeah, so blue comes from the color and the
Mhm.
term, and the mnemonic of it comes from a lot of different angles. But one of the angles is my upbringing is kind of a blue collar upbringing, right? So the blue collar upbringing is the idea that your handshake is your bond, your word is your bond, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. And great leaders, that's how they are. And yeah, they have to sign contracts still. I get it, but their handshake is their bond. Their word is their promise to their employees, to their clients, and so on, right? And I love that mentality. I love that effort and people that are like that have that integrity. And so blue means that. It also means calm and organized and those types of things. But the acronym of it in of itself is very meaningful. And you shared it briefly on the intro. That acronym came to me at 3 a.m. in the morning. I was laying in bed asleep, and I woke up to a voice saying self-awareness. And I had been working at this time, that was about 5 years ago. I was working on coming up with an acronym because that's how I remember things typically.
Mhm.
That's really helpful for me. And I couldn't come up with one that made any sort of sense. And so that word came to me, and I jumped out of bed, ran into the kitchen, and for the next 4 hours, I sat at the kitchen table writing out the beginning of what would become Blue Shirt Coaching. So that's a really it was amazing because I can't take credit for it. It was like it was brought to me, and it's something that I have
Mhm.
to steward really well. But the short version of how you can think about it for the listeners is, if you picture a house, and that house is your leadership house, and the foundation of your leadership is self-awareness. So being a self-aware leader creates that foundation for your leadership. Without that foundation, your leadership house is going to fall, of course. Then the L is lead with accountability, and that's the nails that hold your leadership house together. If you don't have great accountability first within yourself, which is that characteristic I was talking about before, and then also helping your people or your employees have that, then the business is not going to be successful. It can't be. And then using a
Mhm.
growth mindset is the idea of focusing on the 20%, the top 20% of what makes you successful, and everyone else that works with you and for you, helping them to do the same. And that's the walls and the roof of your house. And that's where you make those adjustments. You paint the walls, you remodel things, you remove the carpet, replace it, all those things, right? Those are the little
Mhm.
adjustments we make in our leadership. And then the E is empower others, which is the windows and doors. So this is where people see your leadership and see out and see what's possible because they've been led by you, or they want to be led by you. And they knock on that door and they come in and have the experience of being deeply influenced by your leadership.
Mhm.
So I've used that in with all of my clients. It's really kind of the umbrella of the coaching that I do with them, is to help them really embrace those pillars of leadership.
Mhm. Well, and I think, I mean, you've touched on a lot just in those couple minutes. And I think when people become business owners, they don't always think of the leadership that's going to be required, right? I start as a sole proprietor. I'm
Right.
just, working on my own. But at some point, they may have to bring on, whether it's an independent person that's not an employee, but they're working with them and assigning things, or they bring on a team. A lot of times people don't have that experience prior to bringing someone on to know how to really lead. And I think there's a difference between leadership and management things too. But how would you encourage someone who's thinking like, I don't feel I really have a lot of education in this area. I've never really been shown how to be a good leader. I want to be a good leader, but I'm not sure what to do. Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, it starts with who, not how or what. It starts with who. If you can find the right who to help you, then your success is much more likely, and the stress is much less. Consistently, people are stressed out because they brought in the wrong who, or they won't
Mm,
bring anybody in to help them, and so that's what creates stress. But how do you do that, right? How do you figure out who the right person is? Obviously there's the nuances of interview process and all that, but to me there's this empowerment process to being a leader, because there's tactics, there's strategies, there's all those things that matter and they're helpful. But if you don't have the right people in place, it's kind of
mhm.
useless, because the wrong people can screw all this perfect system up.
Right.
So I have this I call it a five parts or five piece, whatever you want to say, process to empowering other people. So, Candy, when you think about the last really great TV series or movie that you watched, what was that for you, and what was the experience watching that series or movie?
It's hard because I don't really watch TV and stuff too much. We don't even have a TV here. The last movie that I saw, I hate to take up too much time to think about it. I mean, I really like to watch like inspirational movies, true stories of, someone overcoming challenges and
Mm,
things like that too. Those are the kind of things I enjoy. But right off the top of my head, I'm having a hard time thinking of the last one that I
sure.
saw.
So let's say, I'm sure there's a book. You're probably very much a reader, I would guess. If you're not spending time watching TV or whatever, you're probably reading books that are whatever topic they are. But regardless of whether it's a book, a movie, or a TV show, when we're really into that particular TV show, book, or movie, we're riveted, right? We're really
Mhm.
engaged, and we don't get distracted as we're participating in it. And that's the first place to start when it comes to finding the right people and having the right people on your team, is
Mhm.
to be fully engaged and to find that person fascinating. Just like the book or the TV show or the movie was fascinating to us, our body and our unconscious mind engages differently because of that. And so the
Mhm.
concept here for leaders that are a little bit reticent to hire, or those that are struggling with those that they have hired, is to assume that this person that you're learning about is really fascinating, and they have powerful insights to share, and they have wisdom, and they have innovation that if you pull it out of them will be extremely helpful for you. Right? So we start
Mhm.
there, and now we're grabbing those bits of information as they come at us, instead of looking at the negative things from that person, right? And it shifts
Mhm.
the interaction with them. And then you can begin to study them. The second part, you start with the fascination, and then you begin to study them. And you study them by just your interactions with them. If you haven't hired them yet, then you spend time interacting with them outside of a work context or on the phone or whatever, where you can learn about who they are and how they're wired, so that then you can go to the third piece, which is help them to think for themselves,
Mhm.
which in a nutshell is basically asking great open-ended questions of them. And when you do
Mhm.
that, now they're thinking for themselves, and then you don't have to think for them or think about whatever they're resolving, which de-stresses you, frees you up to then find better and more who's to put on your team.
Mhm.
And because they're thinking for themselves and coming up with solutions to whatever problems they encounter, they're going to own their position, own their work, and then you can
Mhm.
hold them accountable a lot easier than if you tell them what to do. And it's important to have processes and strategies. I get it, but they need
Mhm.
to own them and maybe nuance them to so that they can be the one that's held accountable to the efforts they're putting in, instead of to some checklist that they never really created or owned themselves. And then
Mhm.
lastly, you celebrate the losses and the wins. You celebrate the little victories, the big victories, the little setbacks, and the big setbacks. Because
Mhm.
if you don't, then the person won't feel very comfortable taking risks or thinking freely for themselves and resolving problems without your help. So,
Mhm.
long answer, short version of that says, be fascinated, study your people, ask powerful open questions so they can think for themselves, hold them accountable, and then celebrate them. When you do that, now you get to step away from what they're doing significantly, and maybe altogether, because now they're going to own it the way that you
Mhm.
always want employees to own it. And that's freeing, and that's worth it to put the effort in to find the right person.
Mhm. Well, and I think what you're talking about too is empowering your staff as well. I think a lot of times people, when they bring someone on, they want things to be done, their way, a certain way, and they don't want to necessarily release kind of control of some things. And I know that can sometimes frustrate employees and giving them the power to still accomplish their task in the way that obviously you have to have that end result, but maybe there's a slightly different way to do something. And I know I had the situation a couple weeks ago where, an employee had asked me a question about a situation. And I said, this is kind of how I would do it. And then later on, she came back to me and she says, well, you're probably going to be mad at me, but this was a little bit confusing for me. I understood it this way better, so I did it that way. And I said, that's fine, right? We actually ended up with the same result. And I want my staff to be able to make decisions, right? I don't want you to have to come and ask me all the time. And so I think that was eye-opening for her as well, too, is like, I'm not trying to have you do something exactly the way I would do it if we can come up with the same result, if it makes sense for you to do it a different way. And so I think when you're talking about empowering and making them accountable to that result, but giving them some wiggle room, I think that helps as well build, that loyalty to you, and, they're wanting to do their best job for you as well.
Yep, it's true, and it's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to see
Mhm.
happen with my clients as they do that with their staff, and then I hear the results of it. I work with this landscaping company, handyman company, and I was teaching the business owner this and coaching around it, and then all of a sudden he started to buy in. He started to buy into what we were talking about, and he empowered the department head for the landscaping division, and then the landscaping guys started to empower the crews in a different way,
Mhm.
let them resolve the problems, and he not always having the answers and asking them for their insights. And they've become the most efficient they've ever been before, because all of a
Mhm.
sudden they get to think for themselves, and that
Right.
completely shifted the business, and it in fact allowed them to move the business. They moved
Mhm.
from being in the owner's kind of in his house in a way, to now having a place to store everything and having an office. And that was in
Mhm.
a 6-month period, just because they actually empowered their team. And
Mhm.
this is amazing. And it opens up possibilities for businesses and business owners when you don't have to be in all the minutia of it and let other
Right.
people do that work. And it's wonderful, and it's rewarding for
Mhm.
all involved.
Mhm. Well, and that can help reduce the overwhelm too, because I know as entrepreneurs, we wear like 25 hats, right? We have to be the
Mhm.
sales and the marketing and the HR and, all of it. And so if we can offload from our own plates, right, it makes it easier for us as business owners as well. But I know sometimes people just are afraid of what's going to happen if I do not handle all of these things. But like we're talking about, by empowering the staff, it actually makes it more efficient than them having to come back to you, correct?
Oh yeah, 100%. And who doesn't want more efficiency? That's for sure.
Right. And just not having to do all, like you said, all the minutia, right? If we think about it, we really don't want to have to answer every single question that someone has. And I tell my staff, like, if you wait for me to be able to give you an answer, like, I'm the bottleneck, right? I
Yep.
want you to be able to make decisions. And, you know, I think starting off with something smaller, maybe it's not as much of an issue. So if they make a mistake, because no one's perfect
Yep.
and they are going to have learning curves, right? And I think we have to be okay with that as entrepreneurs. But just from my own experience too, I've tried to give them the authority to make some of those decisions. And if they still are unsure and it's going to make a major impact if they make a decision that's not correct, then that's okay. You can ask me that, but I don't want you to ask me every question, because then I can't get my own work done. Right. And I think as the owners of the company, that's where we have to realize is like we are the bottlenecks often in our own companies. And if we can release some of that, it's going to be so much better.
Yep. Yeah, and you can, when you do that, even when the situation is much bigger and it's not really just for them to handle, and we do need to be engaged, instead of being directing, we're collaborating with that
Mhm.
employee or those employees, and that's a great place to be.
Exactly. Well, I know you also say that you help the business owners, be more, do more, have more, give more. And we've touched on probably a little bit of that, but I'm sure there's more to that you want to discuss. So can you talk about those different things?
Yeah, so they're tied to each letter of blue. So if you're going to be
Mhm.
more, it's about being more self-aware. And my goal for me and my goal for my clients is that they be more of the version of who they're supposed to be, right? Who they're meant to
Mhm.
be. In my book right now, Leadership, I talk about becoming the leader you're meant to be. And that's what I'm talking about when I say be more. Because
Mhm.
when we get to embrace who our design, like the way that our gifting, our unique talents, and lean into those, we get to be more. And that is beautiful, right? It's
Mhm.
you get in that sweet spot. I can't remember the name of the professor, McKiley or something like that. It's a really hard name to pronounce, but he wrote a book called Flow. And that's what I'm talking about, where you're in this flow state of this is my perfect spot where I need to be.
Mhm.
And so be more is like that. Do more is about accountability. Because if you're
Mhm.
more of the best version of yourself, you get to do more, but then you have to be accountable to completing it and following through on it. But when you do more, that means you're doing more for others, you're doing more
Mhm.
for your community, you're doing more for your family, et cetera, right? And then when you have more, yes, it's financial for sure. And that's what I want for all my clients and for myself. But more importantly, it's have more opportunities, right? Opportunities
Mhm.
to speak into people's lives, opportunities to hire people, opportunities to make a difference in your community, opportunities to give other people opportunities because you have more of those things. And that's that
Mhm.
growth mindset portion. And
Mhm.
lastly, of course, is to give more. And that's about giving more of your time, talent, and treasure away. Right. So I'm giving more
Mhm.
of my time to other people and empowering them. I'm giving more of my getting their talents into place so they can give more of their talents. And then, of course, the treasure is giving more of your money away. Maybe you're paying your employees better, or maybe you're giving to a
Mhm.
community cause or a nonprofit. Right. So
Right.
if I can help my clients do that in my world, I'm winning big time.
Mhm.
And so are they. Right. So that's the heart behind the be more, do more, give more, or have more, give more.
Mhm. Well, and we've talked a little bit about accountability and empowerment, and I love accountability as well too. I've had an accountability partner since
Mm,
2011. We talk almost every Friday, for all of these years. And actually it's been great because we started talking about business, but then we've gotten to know each other and our families and our kids have grown up and now we're grandmas
mm,
together, and so like we have a very close relationship and so we do hold each other accountable in that way that sometimes you're like postponing things. Maybe you're procrastinating a little bit because you're tired or whatever, but then we can encourage each other by saying, well, this is the goal that you have, and this is why you want to get there, right? So it can be very encouraging. And then the empowerment of the staff. So I would love for you maybe touch a little bit more on that because we talked about it briefly, but we didn't really go into a lot of detail. So do you want to talk about how the business owner themselves can be accountable, how they can set up accountability for their staff, and empowering them to feel confident to make those decisions?
Yeah. So there's kind of two sides to the accountability coin. In the book, I talk about the four parts of accountability, which I call the accountability pass. And then there's the other side of it, which is accountability as it relates to helping others to be accountable. I can't
Mhm.
make you be accountable, Candy, and nobody can make me be accountable. It's my choice,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
the support that you've gotten from that friend is
Mhm.
beautiful, fan freaking tastic. I love it. I did that
Right.
for like recently that's kind of faded and I've turned it more into a mastermind experience with some
Mhm.
business owners. But I've had that in place since I was 18. Once I got into college, I started to have that accountability in place and oh my goodness, to me that's the
Mhm.
message right there. Like if that's the only thing people take away from this, get that accountability partner. But to break down the process, the pass is four things, and I'll keep this brief because I can go real long with this. So I'll keep it brief, but it stands for passive accountability, active accountability, structures, and self accountability. So
Mhm.
passive accountability is the idea of being very, very clear on what you want. People are
Mhm.
afraid to share what they want, right? I want to make $1 million next year. That's the goal, right? That's scary to say, but that's what I want. And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not afraid of it. That's what I want. Okay, great. Now, how do I make that become a passive accountability thing for me, a passive goal for me? I paint as clear a picture as possible about what it would look like for that to happen. And then I tell people about it. When you do that, your unconscious mind engages in the process while you're sleeping to accomplish that goal. And then when you tell other people, some of them will follow up with you. So you tell 20, 30 people and 10% will follow up with you and say, hey, how's it going with your goal? It's a big goal. How are you even going to make that possible? And then you ask one of those people to say, hey, Joe, would you be willing to meet with me on a weekly or a biweekly basis to talk about the goals you have? And I'll talk about the goals that I have. We can really support each other. They're going to say yes. And that's your active accountability, right? So from your passive, you can create that active. And then the structures is your plan. And that would be your to-do list. And I highly recommend people get a digital to-do list as a business owner so that your to-do list can think for you. So you don't have to remember all that minutia. And then you could start to pass on the to-dos to other people a lot easier when you do it that way. And then secondly, it's your calendar. So the to-do list is your things that need to get done. And then the calendar is the who portion, right? Everything on your calendar should primarily, in my opinion, primarily be the people. They're going to help you grow and the people that you're going to help grow in whatever way that fits your business and your skills. And then finally, you have self-accountability. Candy, have you ever jumped out of an airplane, ziplined or skydived before? I'm sorry, or bungee jumped before?
I have ziplined. I have not jumped out of an airplane or bungee jumped.
Okay.
But ziplining is fun.
I have no interest in the zip line or the bungee jumping. I definitely want to jump out of an airplane, but I've done the zip line thing a few times. And when you're zip lining, there's this point where you're in the middle of the course and you're kind of stuck. You can't go back. There's no way you can go back, right? And so when you first start, you've decided that you're going to do this zip line thing. And then when you're in the middle of it and you're 200 feet or 150 feet above the canopy of trees and you're hooking up to that 500-foot long zip line. My wife and I did one in Costa Rica and the zip line was 1,000 feet long. It was, and it was amazing. Way above, it was like one tree was above all the rest. And it was amazing. But I was committed. There was no way that I was going to be able to return back to the forest floor. I had to do that zip line. And that's the same thing here when it comes to goals. We need to be committed at that level where there is no way you can turn back. When you do that, now you have this beautiful combination of accountability. And the thing is, I'm not just making this up, Candy. There's 2 studies that prove how effective this is. Michigan State studied this, and they said that when you do all these steps, the likelihood of success is 76%. And then there's another study by the American Society of Training and Development that said it's a 95% likelihood of accomplishing your goals. So, man, do the process. You're gonna accomplish your goals. Accountability will change your world in unbelievable ways.
So back to like the empowering the staff, do you have any steps that will help, practical steps, help the business owner be able to empower their staff and free them up as well personally, to have other things that they can do in their business and allow their staff to handle some of those other tasks that they should be offloading?
Yeah, 3 things. So one is have your staff take personality assessments, because this is the cheat code to get to know them quickly. And it's a little invasive about them and their personality, but it's not personal in the sense that you're learning about their personal life. So even those that are really private, it's just about their behavioral wiring. And I do DISC assessments. And so I highly recommend that you pick an assessment that makes sense for you and you do that. So that's one thing that helps you to study your employees. The second thing, which is way easier to do than lining up assessments for all your staff, is to ask a 4-word question. A 4-word question. And that 4-word question is, what do you think? That's it. Joe, Susie, Bob, whoever brings you a situation. My clients do this to me all the time. I work with my wife. She does this with me as well. And I work with the VA and she does this as well. And I'm like, what do you think? What do you think we could do in this situation? And that is a great way to empower your employees, to get them to think for themselves. And it really opens up dialogue. It opens up opportunity. I'm partnering with 2 other business owners in my community, and we're doing that together often. And it's such a cool experience to be asking that question of another business owner and the insights that they bring. And then that creates this wonderful collaboration of innovation and ideas that move things forward, right? So that's the second one. I need to remember the third. Oh yeah, the third is 2 to 12 minutes. When you're interrupted in the middle of your day, typically, Candy, I'm guessing, and the people that are listening, that interruption is like a 2 to 12 minute interruption where someone's coming to you and they have a question and you spit back a response, right? Well, take advantage of those 2 to 12 minute interruptions. And instead of just providing a solution and allowing them to farm out their thinking to you, return to them a question. Right. So you have that base question that says, what do you think? But when they come to you, you can ask that. And then if they get stuck or if they're not quite sure, there's other questions you can ask. And you just create those open-ended questions on the spot. And that will empower your team because it's about their brain. It's about their thinking. That's how you empower. You empower their thinking and they're winning, you're winning. There's a question that you can ask I already said the forward question, but there's another one that is so fun to ask. I do it all the time with my clients, and you can ask it repeatedly. And it is, what more do you think or feel or have to say? Whatever the topic is, what more do you think? So you get engaging their thinking, of course, feel, engage their emotions, and then you tell their brain, I want you to say something or have to say. This is like the perfect question. I did not come up with it. A lady by the name of Nancy Klein came up with it. She wrote a book about it practically. But that question is a question that will move the conversation forward in a really powerful way. So those are the ways that I would suggest employers empower their team in very practical ways.
Well, I know this has been a great discussion, but we're running out of time for today's episode. So I would love to ask if you have any offers that you would like to share with our listeners, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me by going to blueshirtcoaching.com or look me up on LinkedIn, Facebook, Kyle Gillette. You'll find me on there. And then I just recently published my Right Now Leadership book, and you can get that on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other retailers right now. And if you do purchase it, the pre-sale on it, I'll give you the free version of the ebook. I'll send that to you once you show me a screenshot. And I'm also offering people to do a free consultation with me. And that consultation is not a sales pitch. It's a legitimate coaching conversation that will help you move forward. So I'd love to offer your listeners those things as a thank you for listening to this episode.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Kyle, for being a guest and talking about this. It was a very interesting topic. And again, I think as a business owners, we do need to learn how to empower and have that accountability and, be great leaders. And so I think this was another great discussion in that direction to help people understand what they can be doing. So thanks so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. I hope you found this topic interesting and enjoyed the informative discussion. Would you please share my show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform? I'd really appreciate your support. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to my guest at any of the links that they shared, or you could send me a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join me for my next interview. And remember, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. This episode is sponsored by Affordable Bookkeeping and Payroll Services. If you are overwhelmed trying to handle the financial aspects of your business, ABP is here to help. Contact us today to discuss your needs at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.